Caspar, you're looking very well. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Thank you, Maria. And it's great to see you.
Fantastic. I sort of expected a blue background because of this whole theme of water and sailing, etc. And you've got this lovely, if anyone's watching on video, very nice grey background, looking very smart today. Lovely to see you. I'm going to get stuck in because, this podcast is going out just at the right time for people to start thinking about goals for
Mhm.
2022. So our timing is brilliant. It's like we've planned it, Caspar.
Isn't it? Isn't
Um,
it? Isn't it just like that?
It is. It's just genius. We are just so good. I'm just going to pat ourselves on the back. So listen, at this very moment in time, because obviously we've been through a lot of, change. What are the trends and challenges you're hearing about right now from your clients out there in the world of business?
Yeah, and absolutely. There's a lot going on, isn't there? There's a lot of challenges, and I think what I'm seeing is that people are being squeezed from two ends. So on the one side, there's all the changes that are going on in the market. There's an awful lot of things that are moving, and I think probably the three most consistent themes that I'm hearing from leaders is we need to be more resilient, we need to be more agile, and we need to undertake a digital transformation. And so there's all this pressure to sort of, go after the audacious goals, the big bold goals, because there are a lot of things changing. But then on the other side, there's the very, very human side of how people are at the moment. And there's been an awful lot of mental health issues. People all sort of clearly been working remotely. There's the challenge about bringing people back together, and how do we do that? And so I think it's trying to get that balance right between going after the big goals that matter and the growth and the things that everyone wants, but also making sure that everybody is on board. I mean, you can't miss the whole conversation at the moment around the Great Resignation, and how do we keep our talent on board? So there's a lot of issues that leaders have to deal with right now.
And do you know what? I think those are probably going to go on into 2022. I don't think these are things that are going to be solved very quickly, are they?
I think you're absolutely right. I think these are sort of these are issues that leaders at all levels need to grapple with, because you're right, they're not going anywhere. The pace of change is not going to slow up. I've been reading a lot recently about the exponential age and the fact that our brains are only wired for linear growth, and things are changing at this exponential rate. So the pressure points on both those aspects of the big bold goals and retaining the humanity is only going to grow. So I think it's something that we're going to be dealing with for a long time.
That's really fascinating, actually, the exponential age and the linear growth. That I hadn't thought about it that way, but that makes sense to me. So, you talked about the fact that people want to put in these big bold goals and want to have audacious targets. I completely get that. Especially when you feel like you've been a little bit in limbo. Not all organisations, because some have exploded over the last 18 months. Some have, in fact, some new businesses have been incredibly busy as well. But a lot of us feel like we've sort of been held back, and we're like sort of caged and ready to get out of those cages and go for these big bold goals. But you also mentioned that side of, you actually said we need to be more human.
Mhm.
Talk to me about what that means.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's the title of my book, as you may remember, Be More Human. So there's a little bit of a plug in there as well, of course. Look, I think the point of that is that remembering when we're going after these audacious goals, that it's remembering that it's humans who drive results, and not results who drive people. So therefore, it's about putting people first. And it's very easy to remember that when we're in this very numbers-driven society. We're driving after the goals. We're looking for our monthly numbers, our quarterly results, our 6-month results, our annual results. And it's very easy to get sucked into that whole mindset of it just being about the numbers and people being an afterthought. And I definitely remember this when I was working for large corporates, that people were the afterthought. And I think there's this huge shift that I feel, that I see, that I hear going on in the world right now. And it really is about appreciating the amazing talents that each person has to offer to the workplace, understanding that each person only does things for their reasons, not for your reasons. There's the rise of purpose-driven organizations, that people want to come to work for an organization where they actually feel they're making a difference. Climate change, sustainability, this is like a huge one right now. So I think it's really dialing in to the people in your organization, what's driving them. And that for me is what being more human is all about understanding what's driving each person on your team. Because if you don't understand your people, they will leave. They will go off and find organizations that appreciate them and their talents for who they are. So I think it's something really important that leaders need to get hold of right now.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And I totally also agree with the fact that often it's all about the numbers. I remember last time I was employed, which is a long time ago, because I'd like to be my own employer, because, I can argue with myself. But last time I was employed, you were only as good as your last month, because I was in sales. You're only as good as your last month, which is really stressful. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, that it's the numbers, you're only as good as your last piece of performance. And the point you made about feeling that you're making a difference, I think, is absolutely crucial. And I can see that's even more important now with all the disruption that we've had. And one of the things that you talk about actually is a disruptor's mindset, which for some people sounds a bit negative. Why do we view disruption negatively?
Yeah, so look, I think I have this. I think you can place everybody on a spectrum where you sort of say, how comfortable are you with disruption, with 0 to 10? And I'm probably like an 8 or a 9. Other people might be a 1 or a 2. And what does disruption mean? It means change. And a lot of people don't like change. Some people love it. Some people hate it. But I think that change. It literally changes our world, and that means therefore that we have to adapt, move out of our comfort zone. And I think for that reason that it's often viewed negatively by a lot of people. And if you have an organization, let's say, I don't know, 10,000 people, there will be, imagine a normal distribution, there'll be people all along that distribution curve of where they sit with that. But you can't avoid disruption because it's all around us. So I think it's being cognizant that everyone else will have a different view on that. But I think it's a mindset that individuals need, that organizations need to feel comfortable with the pace of change and what's happening inside organizations at the moment. So I think it's a really, really important topic.
Here's the thing, right? Here's the thing for me. You called yourself, did you say you were an 8 on that?
An 8 or a 9, yeah.
8 or a 9. That's really high. So I'm an 8 or a 9 if I'm choosing the change.
Right.
If I've decided this is the change. If somebody's imposing that change on me, I'm definitely a 1.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think if you have some part in that discussion, does that help, do you think, to be part of that change discussion?
100% right. It's engagement, isn't it? What's the best way to stress your employees out, right? So your team out is to say, we're going to go and do this, and we're going to handbrake turn on the organization, and we're going to go and change in this direction. Whereas if you say, let's run an experiment. What do we think about this? And create that engagement with it. Then it lets people get on board with that, because not many people like being told what to do. Well, I don't. You certainly don't, Maria. So it's it's all about that engagement, listening to people, and then people go on their own journey to be comfortable with that change.
Feeling a little guilty because I've created a lot of change in my organisation for my poor team. So I might have to have a little chat with them after this podcast. Thank you for that. You mentioned, you actually called it a disruptor's mindset. So the mindset piece is important, would you say?
I think it's hugely important. It's funny. I've just completed. I'm all about continuous learning. So I've just actually completed a course at Cambridge University on digital disruption, just because it's a lot of our clients are going through that. So therefore, let's go deeper into that. And it's this term that I've been writing about, playing with around disruption. And I think one of the core things that I see around the disruptor's mindset, well, several things, is firstly, you need to look at the trends where the world is going, and then to imagine what the world is going to be like in 5 years' time. But actually, to do that, you almost need to take yourself out of the equation and say, imagine that our organization, our team doesn't exist. Where does the world look like? And then once you can have a picture of that world, then you need to say, okay, well, where do we want to position ourselves? How do we play in that future world? And as you go through that journey, that needs all the evidence, all the stories, all the history shows that actually an organization needs to go through an identity shift. And that's a really key piece of transformation. So I think that For people who understand that at a personal level, going through transformation and change, it's much easier for them to get that at an organizational level. So I think those are some of the elements of what I call the disruptors mindset, that there's all these challenges organizations are facing. And it's about that reinvention, which, going back to that thing about, forced change, it can feel really uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I think it's really necessary right now.
Wow, fantastic. Take yourself out of the equation. That's really tough.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
Really tough. And also to sort of look into the future is really tough, I think, as well. I'm really bad at that. I imagine you'd have to get some external help on that, maybe.
I think you have to almost the way I like to think about this is almost to gamify it and to make it fun. And it's just let's imagine, let's play, because when we go to that sense of playfulness, it's easier to do that. But I think it starts with just sort of saying, okay, what are the trends? What's changing in our sector? What are the different things that are happening? And it's, just like studying the different examples, how Kodak, they completely missed the transformation that was going on in their marketplace. Different buyers, it was previously women who were buying, suddenly shifted to men who were buying. The use of images was suddenly going from retaining family memories to sharing and about identity. And so therefore, it's important to pick up on these trends for each organization, and then say, okay, what does that look like? So it definitely is something we need to carve out particular time and space to go and do that. And making it fun is so important, because people may well be fearful of that.
Fantastic. And that engagement point you made earlier, because I'm sure that a lot of people within the organisation will have different views of where the future is going to be. And some of them may be things that you haven't thought of as a leader, and yet they'll be really challenging to think about and to consider. Actually, I think that would be fun. I think that sounds like a really good day for an organisation to do. I hope they do it. I hope they plan it in. Brilliant.
So it's interesting. So I spoke at a kickoff event a few weeks ago. And they had, I was listening to the other talks there. One of the joyful things about being a speaker, right, is you hear everybody else's expertise. And it was someone who was very senior in the university sector. And they said, let's just create a really simple model together. And they had, I think it was 7 or 8 questions, which is, what's the impact of Brexit going to be on this, and various other different things. And then they sort of canvassed the room. And basically, so we ended up having sort of a group view of what the future looks like. And said, okay, so there's our working model of what the future looks like. Now that we understand that, how do we position ourselves? How do we adapt to that? But it was just a really fun, simple way of doing that. And just sort of those choice of the right questions, and just going to that imagination place was fun and engaging. So
wonderful. So at the time of recording, we are seeing more and more teams going back into the office. I hope it continues. Let's hope that by the time the podcast goes out, we won't all be going back home again. But I suspect there's going to be a little bit of sort of a hokey pokey, isn't it? Is it hokey cokey, isn't it? In, out, shake it all about. How do teams adjust to being back in the office? What do they need to do?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I spoke at another event last week, which was 500 people came together, many of whom had not met before, because people had left during COVID, new people had joined during COVID, and also then take on board that over the past 18 months or so, everyone has had a different set of influences because they've been working at home, may have had more time with family, likely had more time with family, friends, and so on, therefore likely to have a different perspective. And what I observe is a lot of people have different ideas about what's important to them. A lot of people saying, actually, family is more important to me than it was before. Some people less so. Just depends where you're on the spectrum. So there's been all these moving pieces. So I think a lot of the assumptions that people have in their minds, right, we're just going to come back together and get on with this, I think those need to be looked at hard. So I think the importance of really listening and engaging a team, getting the team united behind the purpose, is more important than ever. And it can feel like overkill to spend a lot of time on that. But I think it's really important, because again, going back to that being more human thing, people only do things for their reasons, not for your reasons. So therefore, tapping back into that and engaging everybody, I think, is more important than ever, especially with the prospect of the great resignation, that people feeling unsettled and looking for fresh opportunity. So I think, spending the time with the people, investing in your people, more important than ever as people come back.
Right. Great advice. So here's the big question. I'm going to leave you with the hardest question of all. How can teams make 2022 the best year yet?
Oh, that's a hard question. An easy question. I mean, I think it's simple in construct, but it's hard to do. And look, it has to be getting your team back together, engaging them with the story, asking them why they care about this, really focusing on that Polestar story of the future. Where are we going together? Why does this matter? And giving the space for your team to engage with that. Getting them excited, getting them fired up for the future. And, by listening, you demonstrate that you actually care about your people. There's a lot of challenges that collectively teams need to deal with, but if they don't feel cohesive, if they don't feel listened to, then it's going to be really, really hard to do that. So, definitely focusing on the people and getting everybody super engaged with where they're going, because there's a ton of opportunities out there. And, I can't think of a more exciting time to be in the workplace right now. The exponential age, there's change everywhere, but you're only going to do that if your team are engaged in the right place.
Okay, I actually do have one more question, which is a personal one, Cass. There's a personal one here, because I'm nosy. Have you got big, bold goals for 2022?
My goodness, of course. So it's funny. So clearly I do a lot of speaking, but we are building out a business that's behind that. So helping organizations to go through this engagement piece with people, plus also getting involved in lots of different early stage businesses and helping them to tackle their audacious goals, their big, bold goals. So in healthcare space, in COVID space, in fintech, so lots of really interesting things. So it's all about the big, bold goals.
Fantastic. So 2022 could well be your best year yet too, right?
We're lining up for it. We're doing all the things that I'm sharing is exactly what we are doing with all our teams. So
Fantastic. Caspar, thank you so much for sharing lots of great advice and great content with us. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Always lovely talking to you, Maria. And look, I hope there's some helpful ideas out there for anyone listening.
Fantastic. And I want to thank everybody for listening to The Speaker Show. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts. You can keep up with future episodes on the Speakers Associates website, which is speakersassociates.com, or your favourite podcast app. And if you would like to invite Caspar to come and speak at your next event, please contact Speakers Associates in plenty of time to book him so that you won't be disappointed. I've been Maria Franzoni. Bye-bye from me. See you next week.